Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tarnished Bronze. Today, we've got 5 issues in a retcon and a reboot all together. So, we're talking about Legion of Superheroes issue 5, 6, 7, and of course, it is 5 years later and 5 issues in. We're running into trouble. Patrick, what's going on here?
In issue 5, due to the hero formerly known as Monel, as we remember from issue 4, he has punched the Time Trapper out of existence. Basically, killed the Time Trapper. Time Trapper never existed. This rewrites the entire timeline. And in issue 5, we find ourselves in a reality where the Time Trapper, who is now known as the Puppeteer, never existed, and therefore he never created the Legion of Superheroes to prevent Mordru's ascendancy. So Mordru is in command of the Earth, and the Earth is sort of a magical, mythical kind of what do we call it? Wizards and warriors, sorcerers and swordplay sort of realm. The of these 3 issues, and not to be too critical, don't take this the wrong way, but of these 3 issues, my absolute favorite thing is the cover of number 5, showing the two timelines in
Oh,
the
yeah.
hourglass. I love that. I just it's awesome. Yeah.
So, to just be perfectly frank, issue 4 is also a retcon, and so we're retconning into a reboot. And if I've already rebooted Legion of Superheroes, wouldn't I want to start with the reboot? So I think all of the plot stuff in issues 1 to 3 could have easily been punched to the end of this issue, and we wouldn't have had all of these problems because this just makes things really confusing. We'll get into this at the end when we kind of evaluate this issue. But the art is all Keith and Al Gordon here, and it's still pretty strong. They're only like 5, 6, 7 issues in, and they've had some lead in time, so we're not getting any fatigue. We've got Pharaoh Lad back, which is kind of good to see for an issue. So Patrick, this is issue 5. We've got a magical, non-technological Earth. We've kind of got a conspiracy to overthrow Mordru. It's all happening in this, in the Mordruverse. We've got, is that Rond Vidar and Pharaoh Lad here?
Yeah, I think Rond is in charge of the resistance. Farrelad is working with Mordru's harlot. The
Yeah.
Misa, now the White Witch, is how we know her. And Mordru apparently knows about the previous timeline. So he has mentioned this to Misa in passing. She's passing this along to Andrew Nolan, formerly known as the long dead Legionnaire Farrelad, and then he's passing this information along to the resistance leader Ron Vidar, who, as you remember in the previous timeline, was Mordru's captive. Now, 2 quick things. One is maybe it is fatigue. I mean, that's a good call, but I have noticed that I actually really like Giffen drawing this sort of milieu, if you will, more than, and I love his technology. But in 5 years later, we don't really have that technology, right? We don't have the utopian future. It's sort of a broke down future where technology is there, but it's not really functioning as it used to. And yeah, I'm not in loving the 5 years later style, but I do like it better in this issue. Also, not to give away the plot, but we really only stick with this timeline for 1 issue, and I just find that a bit of a waste. I feel like we could have stayed here for, or I mean, maybe it would have been hard to progress the plots if we stayed in both places, if we maybe flash back and forth. But this world is very interesting. I actually, in some ways, like I said, liked it better. And by the end of the issue, it's gone, never to be seen again.
And it
Spoiler
makes
alert.
sense with the Magic Wars. Leading into the whole 5 years later was the Magic Wars. Now, that would have been the ideal time for Mordru to become ascendant, right? That makes sense now. Issue 1 is going to be the Mordruverse.
Yeah, that would have
And
been great. That's a great idea. It makes me wonder, and I know you kind of wanted to get into this later, but I may have said this to you already. It's been a little while, full disclosure, since I read these particular issues. But I wonder if they rebooted, they started, and sometime after the first two or three issues, the edict came down from editorial that this had to be done because it does seem wedged in. It's why be four issues into a reboot that's 5 years later and then have the punch that resets the timeline for one issue only and then go back to the timeline that you just started in issue one with only a few minor changes and then sort of ferret out those changes as you go along. It is a bit confusing. Even whatever 30 years later,
it's
it's a little confusing and confounding.
it's inscrutable
Yeah.
to be honest. And then just so we're fully aware, Mordru does have the probes still, and they do have the listening tech. So it's not quite a Dungeons and Dragons sort of setting. It's got some tech, and then we only see this for an issue, and then we're whited out again with like the same as the end of last issue. So um, Monel just punches walls, and
It,
then he turns the whole world white, and then White Witch gets beaten up and
oh,
upset, and then turns everything white again too. So
no, no, this is Glorith. This is Glorith. Now,
oh
see,
gosh,
Monel punches Time Trapper and the universe out of existence. This time, Glorith, who is Mordru's first wife and a bit player from the Silver Age, I think she turned the Legionnaires into babies once, maybe in like 1966 or something weird like that. She decides to help Rond Vidar. Not really sure of her motivations. Maybe she also knows about the other timeline where she's going to be more powerful, or she assumes that. But she resets the timeline again at the end of this issue at the cost of her life, and reality fades to white again, as you said. And this very interesting Mordruverse, as you called it, is gone.
yeah, it's really puzzling. So I just have a couple of little comments about this issue before we move on. Like I said, the art is still really interesting to me. But the second thing is the one thing that they're responsible for, because Keith Giffen is doing the plot. The dialogue is fucking inscrutable again with the different shades of text boxing that don't always like be consistent. The tonality changes between people, characters who have long established like personalities changing. I understand this is the Mordruverse. People who have no clue who they are. Patrick, is this surviving Jim Shooter's every comic is someone's first comic edict?
No. Jim Shooter, rest in peace. Again, these are sometimes released at a different time, so he did pass away. But if he were not alive at that time, he would have definitely been rolling in his grave. You're exactly right. And what I can't understand, this is a bit before. And now you're right. We did have the Levitz period where sometimes the caption boxes would have the little Legionnaire symbol, right? So we would know who was speaking. I don't know that those were always color coded necessarily, but we've gone away from the Legion signal, insignia, whatever you want to call it, and they also will change the color of the boxes, but it not based on the speaker. It doesn't look
It's
like it's
just
based
willy
on
nilly,
anything.
just stream of consciousness colors of boxes.
With this, it can be the same speaker. I'm certain sometimes it's the same speaker. Now, people can go back and no prize me all they want. I know that there are people who love Tom and Mary, and I just hate to say it, but it's been a bit of a drudgery so far. I have enjoyed parts of it. I'm a huge Legion fan. I have only really read through a close reading of 5 Years Later once. I really did think that I would enjoy it more this time, older, and definitely more accepting of different art styles and stuff. I think I've sort of matured in some ways, but Yeah, there's just a lot about it that I just don't enjoy, and we'll probably get into more of that this in future issues because I actually really like this issue. I kind of wish that later when we rank it, we were judging it on its own because thought it was really strong. It had some neat ideas, and they didn't get in their own way as much. It was I felt a little bit more self-contained, and we weren't just going crazy throwing spaghetti against the wall with all these fan theories from the '60s and crap like that, which I'm just not into.
So Mordruverse, we hardly knew ye, and then we come in with a cover which I'm not so jazzed by. I mean, it's meant to be Mordru, but it could be Roxas, like with his, pirate haberdashery. So who knows? Just not as strong as. To be fair, all of the Giffen covers for 5 years later era are out of this world good. If only the contents were also up at that sort of echelon. But this one is a bit of a rare misfire for me. Anyway, issue 6, we're dealing with the sort of fallout of the Mordruverse, and we don't really know who Glorith. I'm calling it the Glorithverse just because we kind of have a fan shorthand for that, Patrick. But that's not what everyone knew at the time. Now, this is back into contemporaneous times with Sunboy, right? And I'm just going to mention this just so that might instigate your kind of narrative of what happens in this issue. But do you know who dislikes Sunboy out of the three creators here? Like, who's responsible for Sunboy's, like,
If I recall, Keith Giffen does not like Sunboy. And I think I told you maybe in passing at one point that Levitz and Giffen returned to the Legion and wrote some good issues. I liked, I enjoyed, and they sort of wrapped up with the Promethean giants kind of myth. And if I recall correctly, spoiler alert, but this is many years ago now at this point. So if you don't know, now you know. But Sunboy gets cannibalized. The fandom was not happy. It was he was notorious for not liking Karate Kid. And people hated that about Keith Giffen as well. But Sunboy was definitely another one that he just did not seem to be very fond of. That's my opinion, my recollection of it. But yeah.
so anyway, our modern day or our 5 years later day plot is thickening. It seems to that I actually really like Cersei as the villain. Um, but one critique I have of this era is Cersei works far better as the villain if Sunboy isn't such an asshat or an asshole or a never do well or so eroded in his heroism that there's nothing to play off. So for me, the Cersei villain works really well. Is she playing both sides off against the middle? Is she all in with the Dominators? Is she all in with EarthGov originals, or is she one of these new sort of implants from that Dominator conspiracy? Rather, to me, that works far better if Sunboy still has a core essence of heroism, whereas because Sunboy just seems like a corrupted sort of uh, a corrupted non-entity as far as the Legion is. That kind of makes the whole Cersei thing a bit more hollow. If Sunboy still has his idealism, their relationship becomes far more interesting, far more complicated, and actually a plot drive for other Legionnaires going to be working with or against this guy. Whereas it's straightforward now, they're just working against him.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like we lose a lot of the plot anyway because it doesn't, I don't have to be handheld, but I don't feel like a lot of it is really mapped out and explained what's going on. I mean, we know that they have a relationship, but like you said, we don't know if she's corrupting him actively, if he's just sort of unaware, because this issue starts out with him hiring Celeste Rockfish. She is tasked with finding out the whereabouts of Roxas and also who released him from prison. So obviously, I'm presuming that Dirk doesn't even realize that EarthGov is responsible for this. So I honestly think that maybe he's a dupe, maybe a yes man, a corporate shill at this
A
point, maybe,
patsy.
you know. I'm sorry.
He's a patsy.
Yeah, or a sellout. I mean, we can call
Yeah.
him a sellout, but I don't know that he's necessarily gone over to the dark side, right? I think he's sort of being tricked. And so we can see that Celeste is, or excuse me, Cersei is maybe a little bit, responsible for that. But I feel like it's not even really that well mapped out. And that's really one of the problems with now that we've gone back to the first three, four issue timeline with the minor adjustments required by editorial and done by our two retcons is it's a little chaotic for me. And I understand that we want to reveal the mystery bit by bit and all of this, but I think we need a little bit more meat and potatoes before we can introduce the mystery and have the readers sort of figuring things out on their own. And a lot of the letters to the editor, I guess if you want to call them that, sort of bear that out. We see that the some of the readers are very confused. Some of them aren't. Um, but and they love it. For me, like I said, I don't need to have my handheld, but I do like a little bit more of a strong narrative through line, and sometimes I'm not getting that here.
Yeah, I'd love to remix this, Patrick. Just give me all of the original art and we can put this into a more coherent thing and rescript it, and it would make a lot more sense, even if we don't have all the issues in the right order or we just bin some issues entirely. I think that would be far more straightforward, but binning issues entirely is something that will come down the line, I think, in the next few issues. So Mordru is still very powerful in the non-Mordruverse. He's far more powerful than what I'm used to, even after the Magic Wars. Because, like, for a lot of my reading, which is the Levitz era forward, I'm trying to go back into the shooter issues, but he's kind of almost a joke villain. Um, does Mordru have a legitimate level up here, even in the non-Mordruverse? It seems like he's a heavy hitter now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would think maybe not quite as much as the Magic Wars, but you're exactly right. He's still a very powerful individual. And the only reason I say that is because, as we know, I think is it this issue or the next issue, they're able to sort of negotiate with him, and he knows that there are limits to his power at this point. He's still sort of rising in power, but he's still a very dangerous villain, and he has his own planet here. I guess he's on Tharn, I think. But yeah, the Legion sends a team. New Kono, one of the few new characters that they've wedged in that we both sort of appreciate and like, among the panoply of new characters that we've gotten for no discernible reason. Ultra Boy, Cosmic Boy, Timberwolf, and Chameleon Boy, they've all gone to Tharn, and Mordru's eavesdropping on them and then tortures them with these haunted memories from their past, and that's what we're seeing here, and that was actually one of the most interesting parts of this issue for me was because it gets to tell a story about the characters, what their fears are, very Mirage from the New Mutants, and that's a good storytelling device for me.
Yeah, I think this part is really strong. There's in these three issues, there's sort of 8-page segments which are incredibly strong. Because I don't know magic, maybe they're the more straightforward parts of it, and we'll get onto that next issue with the massive beatdown that's far more straightforward, but it looks really cool. So we've got our is this the major villain of the piece? Like the background villains are Earthgov and the Dominators, but for the first sort of 10 issues, 11 issues, I guess Roxas is the big threat. Old mate with his pirate outfit looking, very much the dandy. I don't know what that visual choice is for. It doesn't seem to match kind of like any. I know that you're trying to say Adam and the Ants was really big and the Prince sort of outfit from the late 80s, but Legion usually was ahead of the curve as far as fashions, and now they're behind the curve if they're doing this in 1991. So, although that's the great Prince Diamonds and Pearls video from around that time, which
A favorite from high school. I'm surprised to hear you say that because I was critical of it at first. I'm especially critical of the fact that so many of them are wearing this style, right? Lightning Lad is very much the foppish dandy with the frilly cuffs, and I just I don't think it looks great. It looks like it's onerous to draw every month. You've already got 9 panels. You're already drawing so much, and we're definitely quickly seeing the fatigue, in my opinion, where the faces start to look more and more troll-like. We're getting the same lips on especially the female characters. So I don't really know why, but I actually thought that when we first started this, you weren't so down on it, and I was very much like, why does he look like a futuristic Joker? It detracts from the stakes. He's a homicidal maniac, but then we're making him a joke where he's having these humorous conversations. Like, I get it. Let him be crazy. We don't have to have all of the comedy, and I guess maybe this is a Giffen staple. We spoiler alert again, we have some other Giffen issues that are coming down the pike, as Matt says. And I'm starting to wonder, I love Giffen as an artist. Do I maybe not like Giffen that much as a writer?
So,
Hate comments below, but
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of corny jokes and everything is really laden with comedic relief, and I don't think Roxas needs it. He's a homicidal maniac who has committed genocide. His background from the Legion point of view is that he killed everyone on the planet Trom except for Element Lad. So can someone do that and be completely out of their gourd where they're making jokes and killing people at the local mall while they go clothes shopping? I don't, it's too much for me. That's just me.
Yeah, I thought initially it was a nice juxtaposition between every all the old Legionnaires wearing their trench coats or their boiler suits and like this fabulous, outrageous, flamboyant sort of character, right? Like that, who's larger than life. He's a space pirate. Now I just think it's kind of annoying because everyone has this sort of get up. It's not. It doesn't sort of
Mm.
the opulence of it is not an outlier as what it sort of seemed like in those first two issues where we had, uh, the main characters all going around in trench coats. So now I'm kind of just thinking that it's a visual tick that everyone has to be dressed like this rather than a visual choice where this is showing how outlandish
Mm.
our villain is. That was my little comment on
And
that. We
because of
have
you saying that,
to, sorry.
I was just going to say, you saying that makes me wonder for the first time, which is odd, but I wonder if Roxas is being written as if he's gay. Because he is very, especially that last page you had up. But he does now. I'm wondering if that's supposed to be part of his, or maybe it's one of his personalities. He's very fabulous, and he's
Yeah, I don't know if that's a meta commentary on Jim Shooter, and we all know that there's some unsavory stuff that the gays have been portrayed as in various comics. Now you got to remember that back in the day they were all aimed at 10-year-old boys, so I'm not sure how much social commentary you actually fit into this stuff, especially non I don't want to get dig ourselves into a hole. Non-economic social commentary is probably not a part of comics for the longest time, unless it is like hardcore gender stereotypes, which probably were easily there and not outlandish for the time that they were made.
no,
Here,
that's fair. And I think this era, and also maybe Tom and Mary as well. This is right because this is sort of my transition from high school to college, which is when the terms PC sort of started to come into vogue, and people actually started talking about these sort of um, issues that have kind of taken over the zeitgeist in the last maybe 10 years or so. And so now I think we're starting to see that, right? And later on in later issues, we'll see that with some of the gender swapping and whatnot. And so I think this is just the genesis of that. But I had never really thought that, he's just a foppish dandy. But then I was like, oh, maybe he's gay. But I mean, I guess who can distinguish between the two, right? Unless we actually catch Roxas in the bedroom with somebody, what's the difference?
and I think because everyone else is also dressed like that, it's less abundantly clear. Let's put it that way. So if it was just this guy and everyone else, you're kind of like, well, it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, right? But because there's all these other bizarre get-ups that other characters are wearing, especially like Sunboy with his like, if he doesn't look like a 17th century French nobleman, I don't know who's going to. Um, does that make sense, Patrick? Like because so many other characters are dressing in this dandyish, foppish manner,
No, no, no.
doing their
You're
Oscar
exactly right.
Wilde.
It's less of an indicator that there's something different about him. That's a great point.
So
Also, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole, but this is what people come here for. If anybody comes here, is right. We definitely get off track. Did you know, speaking of ducks, walking like a duck, that duck is actually sort of a Spanish slang slash slur for a gay person? Pato.
I I did not know that. So now I have to apologize to all our Spanish listeners about my slurs that I'm just throwing out left, right, and center. Yeah, so fantastic. My heartfelt apologies to all of the Spaniards I've offended.
So just FYI, I just recently learned that myself. So anyway,
So
Celeste
tarnished bronze, you come for the comics, but you stay for
for
all
the
of the
for the
insults.
slurs, for the social slurs. Celeste and Bounty. So Celeste Rockfish, my favorite extraneous character that I don't give a crap about. And Bounty, who is here, she's got this little tattoo on her face. We find out later that she's Dawnstar. So there's another spoiler for you. Um, Interestingly enough, I think I read online that they removed her wings because Keith Giffen didn't like the way they looked and didn't want to draw them. So, and so this is basically, from my understanding, this is supposed to be Dawnstar with just without the wings, but nobody recognizes her. And then some people online were like, "Well, she had a terrible personality and wasn't friends with anyone, so only Wildfire would have recognized her anyway." So I thought that was kind of funny.
Just to add to that undercurrent of smut that this channel is known for, I don't think when Mike Grell was drawing Dawnstar, everyone was looking at the wings. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
no one would notice whether she had wings or not.
She's definitely a favorite of the fanfic artists online. You definitely see a lot of, yeah, images that I won't necessarily repost because some of the girls on my feed would be like, what's up with Dawnstar? So yeah, they're going to see Element Lad. He's on his homeworld of Trom, where and he obviously has this history, as I mentioned earlier, with Roxas. So they want to see if he might know where Roxas is, and they are ferried there by another extraneous character that no one cares about. That is going to be heavily featured in 5 years later, and that's Devlin Orion. So
And Devlin gets superpowers at some point, so we have that
yes,
to look forward to. Because if there's something that this book needs, it's more people getting random superpowers by literally getting hit in the head with some sort of electrical shockwave. So that's something. But one of the best parts of this book, one of the best parts of Legion of Superheroes in general, is Supergirl and our Supergirl adjacent character. And in this case, it's Laurel Gand. And in this case, I love the 9 panel grid. I love it even more when we subvert it a little bit by keeping the one scene across multiple panels, which you can see twice in this pick here. And so this jacket wearing jeans G string banging lady is gonna save the day for us, right, Patrick? But we hope.
yeah, I really do like Laurel Gand. I'm glad that they found an interesting way. I don't know that she has to be a proxy for Supergirl. I mean, they could have. This is what I don't understand about all the reboot nonsense is we could have just decided that we're just not going to refer back to the supers and just move on with our life. And we could have had a blonde superhero who maybe wasn't a Daxamite, but could have been super powerful, or maybe she could have gotten her powers a different way and maybe she has some of the Superman powers, but not others. Or I mean, there are a million ways that you have to go, or that you can go without having a Supergirl pastiche. That said, I'm fine with it. The only two problems that I have with Laurel Gand, I like kind of the way she's a badass. They've really leaned into that. That she grew up. She's very warlike, very Xena warrior princess. I don't like you just look at that middle panel on the left, and she like That is not an attractive lady. With all due respect, not all superheroines need to be attractive, but I'm not liking how the women are looking in this art style, and I just can't help it. I also think that the G-string is super excessive. I mean, I don't
That's,
understand how you can fight crime and fly between planets and have that up your
I'm not
ass. That's just, I don't like it.
I'm not laughing in a 15-year-old boy manner. I'm laughing in the sense that someone has to be off their gourd to think that this is like a thing that would be good. That's what I'm laughing at. Yeah, but
Why introduce a new character and have her just completely bare-assed? I understand. We are in the 90s. It's not like I guess maybe there was a very small window of time. I would have thought that was in the 70s when you would introduce a bare-assed female character. We had the Disco Legion, right? And
so
Cosmic Boy with his
the
chest
one thing I
out.
want to get straight just here is the the Supergirl, the Lang, is it Lan, some Lang who got turned into a manhunter retcon.
Laurel Kent.
Laurel Kent. So she was a favorite of mine. And then they kind of like made it a bit of a sordid sort of thing with her at the very end. And then as she was going to escape this sordid relationship, they kind of turned her into the robot, which I really disliked. And so I understand people are just, oh, all she wears is a cape. But that cape actually was pretty, like, it was an abundant cape. Let's put it that way.
And it
Um,
was interesting. It was an interesting visual. I
yeah,
actually really like that too.
yeah.
Oh, by the way, she has a legion of, for such a minor character, a legion of fans, pun intended, online. People love Laurel Kent. People are still pissed off on the daily that she was retconned into a manhunter 30 some years ago. People are still not over it. Just FYI, I have my finger on the pulse.
So the only thing that I like about that retcon is the beautiful cover, which has half of her human and half of her robot. That is worth the price of admission. All of the internal stuff in that comic is absolute garbage. So save your hate for later. Um, but yeah, we need to just do a bootleg version of Laurel Kent as a proper Legionnaire. So Patrick, we get out of issue 7. Now the cover for issue 8 looks pretty distressing.
Yeah, I think this is White Witch. She's almost unrecognizable though, as
Yeah.
many of the characters are lately. Especially, I mean, it seems like the covers are even more so, which is weird because a cover is supposed to sell you what's in the book,
These
and
ones,
like we've joked many, many
yeah,
times, I'd still probably fall for it. I'll buy a good cover with a dog turd wrapped inside. So I'm not saying that the cover isn't interesting. We can definitely see there's a lot of mayhem and turmoil, but yeah, I'm finding the characters difficult to identify. And I
so
think it must be Myconel though.
yeah, so this comic cover is something that I would expect an amateur like me to draw. If there's a death scene and you stumble and the homicide department is stumbling across a body on a street and it's really hard to draw faces, you draw them with all this scraggly hair all over, so then you don't have to like draw someone attractive, which is quite hard to do. So, so Patrick, this kind of like is really like 90s black and white boom to me. So I like the setting of it, but the fact that these guys are just really, really good, I would expect White Witch to be more readily identifiable. Now I can
And I
forgive.
get it too.
Sorry,
By the way, I do want to say, to be fair, she's not White Witch right now, so she's Myconel. So she doesn't have the white hair color. She doesn't have the all white body and white outfit. So that can make it more difficult. But we haven't had a lot of establishing shots, for example, of Misa now. It
yeah,
seems to me, I mean, yes, she has been here and there, but I don't know. It is a problem with the book, and like we can see, the overdrawn lips and the sort of I'm not enjoying the hairstyles, and the hairstyles are very important to me. So I don't know. Here we have Laurel Gann, though she's shown up. Another thing actually I was thinking of when we were doing issue 6, we had the flashbacks, or we will have the flashbacks.
yeah.
Sorry, I've already read them of Laurel Gann back in the day. Okay, as the kids used to say. Um, when she had this beautiful pleated skirt that was very reminiscent of a female version of Monel's original costume. And so she's really the pendulum has swung violently to the other side with the G-string. I don't like it. Look at the first panel on the second page. That looks so awkward and unattractive to me. I don't even think a teenage boy would be really relishing that. That's just not, I don't like it.
So I know a thing or two about fan service, Patrick, and no one's buying their Japanese manga for drawings like this. Let's put it that way. Now, we got that out of the way. What I want to say is what an amazing stalking slash fight scene this issue opens up with. Um, we might have some queries about the attire, but when you look at the actual shots, like that is an awesome shot of someone who's like
Mm,
looking through a window. This is an
agree.
amazing, the bottom second page, bottom left, that looks like shock. Whatever is happening to Laurel in the bottom right corner, that seems like it's got heft behind it.
And there have
Um,
been a lot of those throughout this. One in particular, in an earlier issue that we just of this series episode that we just did, was sort of from behind Mordru as he stood on his palace patio, looking over the kingdom. I mean, there have been a lot of Giffen's layouts are incredible. Sometimes, like you said, the penciling looks like exhaustion might be settling in. I'm not always loving all the facial features, but you can't argue with the establishing shots. I completely agree. And what's going on here is Laurel has busted into Mordru's palace, and she's confronting his henchman Vrikos, I guess
yeah,
is how we're going to say that, and he's some sort of vampiric creature, another extra. Now, here I'm actually fine with us introducing new villains. I think introducing new villains is a great thing. I think the Legion of Superheroes has such a vast cast that a lot of these new um, characters on the hero side, I feel like are extraneous and maybe not needed because we just have so many characters that we can deal with and use. I don't really see the point. However, in this case, I think this is great. I don't know why we're not drawing his face at all. I don't know if that's ever explained. And I don't really love the idea of vampire. I don't know that we needed a vampire.
so I was
I'll
going
just
to comment on this, Patrick. I'm not a fan of the face in the shadows. I could have been sold on it if the reveal was like super amazing. I could live with it if this top left panel or the top right panel on that first page here was a full page splash. Then I could have lived with this like mysterious shadowing, which is not an artistic tick of Keith Giffen's just in this issue. It's an artistic tick going back to the issue 50 of LSH with the Brainiac issue. He kind of has this established for quite a while, this face in the shadows thing. I think it's part of that espionage squad sort of fallout issue.
mm.
Anyway, that's going back in time. I just wish the review was better. I find it quite cool that there's a new villain. It's hard enough to keep track of the Legion of Superheroes. I understand I can keep track of Kono because it's obviously a visual, like she's blue. Does that make sense? So that's sort of easy for me. Whereas sometimes this just gets like lost in the esoteric, like, oh, here's the blue haired lady. Now, is the lady with the red hair meant to be the white witch, or is that a totally new character or someone else I've forgotten? Because I'm reading this and it's like 24 pages plus three text pages plus 2 pages of letter columns to figure out what the hell is going on. Nonetheless, just want to show this, the art is fantastic. Vrykos is really giving the rest of the Legion a run for their money. Laurel Gand is in trouble, and she just looks like built like a brick shit house, might I add. And if she's getting taken apart, like that's really selling the villain. Keith Giffen is really good at that, even in this sort of like fugue state of fatigue. He's scripting two other series right now, the normal Justice League and so on and so forth. I don't know how this guy managed to do it, and he doesn't. After a few more issues, he'll just be sort of running on fumes. But boy, like just brings it in these 3 issues, Patrick.
Yeah, the fight also makes the issue move along a little bit quicker. One thing, go back one scene, just one thing that I think the fact that we have the third panel on the left with the odd mouth and the no eyes, but we go back to Shadow. I actually thought that maybe that was a transformation. I'm still not 100% sure if that's what his normal face looks like, and that's why. So it almost like if we had seen him without Shadow, but with his face looking like that, then maybe I would think, oh, that's what he normally looks like, but then we just usually have it in Shadow. But because it was in that, just that, even the first time I read this, I actually thought that maybe that's just what he does before he attacks. I don't know. I can
Okay.
see here he's kind of smiling too. So it kind of makes me think of it different, but that's, and maybe that's part of it, I'll let you interpret the art the way you want to, but I'm the kind of person who likes to know what does this character look like? What are their power sets? How many, I'm definitely in the Marvel frame of the guidebook, the official Marvel guide, right? Where how many tons can he press and how
Okay.
fast is he? So, I don't necessarily like interpreting it all myself, but yeah, I had actually thought that maybe that was a transformation for him. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah,
Like,
it
does
makes
he
sense
normally not have eyes?
if he's a sort of void vampire, I kind of get it. Maybe he inhabits an individual, and that part, that apparatus, that life force feeding apparatus, is the thing that is consistent across. Now we have to do a bootleg Laurel Kent, a bootleg Vrykos comic just to explain what the hell is going on. Yeah, that's a lot of spare time that we need, Patrick, to draw all these comics to explain all this crap in the Legion of Superheroes.
No, what you had gone forward to, I actually really loved, and what they do, and I'm not exactly sure why, is they explain Cosmic Boy's tense dinner with Mordru, where he's trying to negotiate the release of the team, and Ron Vidar and White Witch, just in these text pages, which worked for me. I don't know why. I thought it read well. I thought it was interesting, and it made me think, oh, wow, I could read a Legion book without the pictures, maybe. So, yeah, I actually really like that.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Now, one of the things that I have written in my notes in capital letters, might I add, the one problem I have with these text panels is all the important stuff is happening off panel. So the negotiation with Mordru, we have the sort of dinner picture, right? And then the text explains what they were doing. And then this thing here, which is like an awesome sort of garden in some sort of sci-fi world. Like that's the one irritating thing about these text pages is the important stuff is happening off panel. I could understand if this was part of the world building, but not the important plot points. Now, I've just praised this issue because we've got like an 8-page fight scene with all these different characters, looks really cool. I don't know why we're not making more issues of this or something, because the next two issues are going to basically be more retcons after we've just had a bunch of retcons, and then an origin retelling after we've just had a bunch of retcons. Why don't we just use the next issue to fill out the rest of this stuff? Some of these decisions that these people are making are absolutely crazy, Patrick. Like, you're telling
And
me in
you're
these
right.
9 panels, we couldn't have had one conversation with. Sorry, go on.
No, you're exactly right, because I like the way they were written, and I like the story that they told, but you're exactly right. It would have been great to see maybe Cosmic Boy having dinner and like a bead of sweat is coming down his brow, because it was a tense scene that they described. It would have been nice to see it. I totally agree. And if it's a timing thing, it almost feels like a timing thing, right? We don't have time to draw this. We're just going to write it out in the script, and then we're going to immediately go into retcons drawn by someone else. So we're 7 issues in, and it feels like we're already putting in filler issues to spread out the schedule, and maybe cheating a little bit by not drawing the 9 panels for a really important scene.
Okay, so my one critique of this is
Now
that it.
that said,
Go
Oh, I was
ahead.
just gonna say that said, all's well that ends well. Cosmic Boy does negotiate the release. White Witch lets loose and fries Vrykos, and we all get away, and then we sort of reset back to neutral. So,
So my final thoughts on this is also embedded in the first three issues, but we should have started off 5 years later with the Glorith or the Mordruverse, whatever one you want to call it, because then it makes some sense. And it's 5 years later, so who can? We're still missing all the stuff that we're missing, but we can fix the stuff that editorial needs us to fix, all in the same foul swoop. Then step two is you fix the timeline. So you have issue what would be 6 and 7, these current two issues that we've had, or you could do them in 8, and then you could actually draw out that the cursory text pages. And then during the fixing, things that aren't as they should be are actually a natural progression of the fact that you've changed the timeline rather than we've changed the timeline back to the shitty 5 year later timeline. So now we've got the 5 year later timeline, we do a timeline reboot, and then we reset that, and now we're still back in the same shitty 5 years later timeline. That could have just organically arisen from one timeline shift. Oh, we fixed it. Mordru is not the center of the universe anymore. The Glorithverse doesn't exist. And now, as an accident of that, oh, Sunboy's a bit off. Oh, Earthgov and the Dominators together, that's a bit off. But anyway, at least you don't have Mordru will solve this problem. Does that make sense to you,
oh yeah,
Patrick?
no,
Like,
I totally agree.
I I'm lost, like
The
where we
only
are.
thing that I can think that it is that it was timing. Like maybe they already had the first few in the can, and then they had to make these changes on the fly. But then that seems odd too, because how would you get these issues written and drawn and publicized where they were? So yeah, I mean, and I've read some about this period, but I'm actually not 100% sure. Maybe the answer is out there, and I just haven't seen it, or
So
I've read it and forgotten.
Big Jim Shooter, he did create Mordru. Do you think that this little mini saga does him justice, Patrick? Like I said,
Yeah, I
I
think
do.
so. Yeah. Yeah, and Mordru is always one of my favorites. I really loved, I think I sent you one of his, I don't know if that was his first, but one of his first, it was sort of a tell, not show so much, but the way Shooter told you that everybody was so fearful of Mordru and how powerful he was, it was very effective. He was really terrifying to the Legionnaires, and as a kid, when you read that, you picked up on it too. So he's always been a favorite of mine, and I think this is good. I mean, like I said, I really love the tension between him and Cosmic Boy sort of convincing him, don't martyr us and have the entire universe against you. You're not quite ready for that. So why don't you just let us live to fight another day, and then we'll settle this in the future.
Well, it's always fun talking to you about the Legion, Patrick, and we will have to get into that two issues of the Jim Shooter Legion with Mordru. Um, because I kind of think that they've made Mordru a viable threat again.
Mm.
So that's kind of fun moving forward. Even though, like I said, in that outline of what actually goes on, it's very convoluted and it's not helping the mystery of like how can we get EarthGov back under the control of the people rather than control of the dominators. So none of the storylines are really serviced in this three issues. All we
Mm.
got is we got some gender confusion with Roxas that we managed to extricate ourselves out of without offending too many people except for the Spanish. So, Patrick, where does this land? This is a hard one for me because the high, like Legion of Superheroes 5 years later, the highs are high, but the lows are low, and the things that irritate you greatly.
Yeah. Um,
So why don't I start? I don't like it as
sure.
much as heavy metal, but it was on a par with the first three issues.
Okay. Hmm. I actually feel like in reviewing it with you, I liked it a little bit more than I did when I reread it on my own and made my notes. Um,
To be fair, the art in the fight scenes and some of the art is still really strong. We don't have Giffen fatigue hitting us yet, which is a real thing that's going to come down the pike. So
And I do really like the Mordru universe. I really like that
So
aspect.
Patrick, are you upselling me to is this around par with the Justice League annual one?
That's what, yeah, I was definitely moving up. Yeah, I
Heavy
would.
metal is silly. It is our boundary of like I went in with low expectations and was blown away. This one I went in with high expectations. Some of it was met, other parts irritated me greatly. So I don't want to let the irritation steer me away from the fact that the art is still gorgeous. Laurel Gand is really fun. Kono is really fun. She has a bit of a good moment here. The storyline is actually quite interesting. It's the other accoutrement of this, like the time span, some of the creative decisions, the order in which these issues are coming out, which is frustrating me. So I'm pretty happy to have it like at the annual one, if that's where you want it.
Yeah, I would think maybe even above annual one. I love annual one. There is some reminiscent reason for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love the art and I love the little gremlins and the demons and it really is the art. Otherwise, it is a bit of a formulaic comic, but you've got this huge cast of just great looking original JLAers just in their glory days, just standing around and posing and looking great. I feel like this comic is more ambitious and like I said, having them three issues together, judging them as three issues together, I feel like stuff is happening. You're right. The main plot is not really being progressed, but we're getting Laurel Kent introduced, and we're showing her having this battle, and the Legion is slowly coming back together. Yeah, I'd almost put it just above JLA Annual One, I guess. What do you think
Okay.
about that?
I'm pleased. This is it. Don't get us wrong, Tarnished Bronze followers, like, follow, and subscribe if you want more of this discussion with Patrick and I. But we just kind of like in a general way, these are hidden gems. Like if you enjoy Keith Giffen, you'll probably like 5 years later. If you have if you're a diehard Levitz fan from the late 70s, you'll probably think it's the worst thing that you've ever read. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, but this is definitely something that if you like Legion of Superheroes at all, then you probably should delve within with this a little bit. There's more to life than Mark Wade, and there's more to life than Levitz. And 5 years later gives you a great glimpse at, in some ways, an experimental look at the Legion of Superheroes. What happens if they weren't like the Boy Scouts of the 31st century or the 30th century? Patrick, is that a fair like?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens if the future isn't as great as we hoped it was in the 60s, right? We
Yeah,
kind of stuck with that for 20 years and now now we're going with the future that we envision today.
yeah, yeah. So fantastic.
Is that too dark?
No, that's the future ain't what it used to be.
Exactly.
All right, so thanks for joining us with the Glorithverse, the Mordruverse, and Legion of Superheroes 5 years later, issue 5, 6, and 7. We will be back soon for more Legion, more Bronze Age stuff, and more comics than you can shake a stick at. See you next time.